Hello and welcome to the I Need Healing podcast, produced by the Phi Mu Alpha Overwatch League. My name is Shaka Khan. I will be your host throughout these podcasts. I'm currently in the low diamond rank and am typically a support main. This podcast is being made to help out the lower SR players in our league and anyone else who may stumble upon it. Every Monday for 5 weeks we will be dropping a podcast with new guests each week, answering community submitted questions. During this podcast we will have 3 guests, 2 of which are some of our higher ranked players, and the third will be someone who has run the gauntlet and climbed from the lower ranks to the high ranks. With that being said, it is my pleasure to introduce our first guest, Jabo.
Hey everyone, I'm Jabo. I am currently a low diamond flex player, play a little bit of everything, or a lot of it of everything. I have coached about 5 teams now. I played on a team called Scorched Esports for about 8 months, and have logged probably 800 hours or so in scrims with that group. We went from a low plat team all the way up to a low masters team with minimal roster changes. And then my first season, the Phi Mu Alpha Overwatch League, was actually last season, Season 7, with Goats Gone Wild.
And our second guest is going to be Foxen.
Hey guys, I'm Foxen. I am a primarily projectile DPS, specializing in Hanzo and Genji. I've got some experience with main tank, and I currently sit at the low diamond tier. I've been a captain for the last 3 seasons with the PMA OWL, as in the previous season to those captaining seasons playing on Marchand Moon. I've played with a few teams outside of the PMA OWL, and I currently play with the Banshee Esports. I've got some experience with the Open Division. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So our third guest is going to be Cardus.
Yo guys, what's up? I'm Cardus. I am a mid-plat main tank player, and this is my 4th season being in the PMA OWL. I don't have as much Open Division experience as the other 2 gentlemen, but I'm the one who climbed the gauntlet. As Shaka said, I actually started playing this game with a controller back during launch, so RIP. And then this past season I was the captain of the team Did Somebody Say Peanut Butter, which we delivered a championship with Shaka. So.
And thank you so very much for the championship. I do appreciate it. I love being drafted onto winning teams. With everybody being introduced here, let's go ahead and dive into our first question. How do I play around players who don't know the basics of Overwatch? For example, the people who don't know how to press W, people who don't know to use Nano as a cooldown, the fact that Moira and Ana together is kinda bad, and they say specifically at the gold elo. Firstly, Jabo.
Well, I'm going to be straight up with this. This is about the most tilting thing that I experience in Overwatch. Even in Diamond games, you get people who just simply don't understand the core mechanics of the game. So this is going to happen at every elo, and there are different ways to deal with that. So first off, everybody likes to say that, yeah, you could just jump into comms and like micromanage everybody and stuff like that. If you can do shot calling and have it not impact your performance, and you need to be honest with yourself about that, if you can shot call and have it not adversely affect your performance, you can do a little bit of shot calling here and there. Specifically, let's say I'm playing as a Zarya, and my Reinhardt is being a little weenie in a choke, and he doesn't want to push through, and his shield's just getting shredded, and he's like, I can't push, whatever. If you're playing Zarya, you'd be like, hey, I got you, Ryan, let's do this, and be like, okay, I'm bubbling you, and he gets bubbled, and he's like, oh, I'm actually not dead yet. And then you jump in front of him with your personal bubble, and he's still like, oh, I'm still not dead yet. So basically, you're just in this little duo situation between a Reinhardt and a Zarya, you're giving your Reinhardt encouragement to move forward and play his game, while at the same time allowing yourself to play your own game. The flip side of this is, 1, people don't always respond well to being given feedback in the moment, especially in comp games. And 2, maybe you don't want to be shot calling in a game. Maybe it adversely affects your gameplay, maybe it's something you just don't want to deal with. So the other option is to play around that fact. We'll go with the classic example of DPS Moiras. Everybody hates your DPS Moiras. However, if you know that your Moira is going to be a DPS Moira, you can play around that fact. You can realize, oh, I might actually have to go get some health packs. I might have to do things like, not taking as much damage. I might have to be a little bit less aggressive, but I know that my DPS Moira is going to be going on these mega flanks and probably getting a few kills because she's in their support backline, and they're not going to be able to kill her in time. So basically, if you have a non-ideal situation on hand, you need to figure out a way to either A, influence the situation via communication, or B, you need to play around that situation yourself and alter your own play style to fit that crappy situation.
I'll jump in right after you hear J-Bo too on this one, and I'll give some attempt at advice here. If you recognize that your team is rough, the first thing, at least for me, to prevent the massive tilt amount is to realize that the game is basically set up into 33.3 degrees repeating % chance that you are going to win. Right, so we're talking 33.3% of the time you are going to win no matter what you do. Your team is going to carry you into the oblivion, and you are going to win whether you feed or not. 33.3% of the time your team is going to feed, and no matter what you do, whether you win a 5k team fight, your team is going to lose a point and you're going to get full held at point A. And the other time is when you're actually able to influence. If you recognize that your team is probably not one that's going to win, you need to play your best, understand where you make mistakes, and then figure out how to do better in the next game. Recognize that the game is over, that the SR is lost, and that you can move on from that point. After that, once you recognize if you are in that scenario where you can carry, I would fully suggest that you choose, as J-Bo's already kind of alluded at, play the hero that you can make the most impact with, whether it's working with your team or not. But if you're feeling like you're unable to do things because you're trying to play around your teammates who are incompetent or not playing at the level that you feel like they should be, play a hero that you can make an influence at. If they have the DPS Moira, okay, don't rely on yourself to play main tank Reinhardt. Maybe instead play Monkey, who's got a little bit more mobility. Maybe play the Wrecking Ball to move around a little bit more quickly, and you can grab those health packs. Do something different once you recognize what the issue is. If you recognize a problem, find a solution that isn't banging your head against the wall. That happens to so many players, especially at the lower levels, is you're good at something, or maybe you recognize whatever the issue is, and then you don't change to adapt. That's where your mistake comes in.
Yeah, I agree with both these guys. I think that for me as a main tank player, it's really easy to see, like I play Reinhardt and Winston. They're the two biggest heroes in the game, so it's really easy to see where I am. So I can just be like, hey guys, let's stack on me, or something like very, very simple communication like that. And it's like, all right, we're gonna go to this point, and just being very clear as a main tank player, just at the very least telling your team where you're going. And if they run off and do something else, well, that kind of sucks, but that's just what they're gonna do. So just being the kind of the most consistent person, because people are gonna do random things. That's just how it's gonna work. But I think just also trying to be positive and being like, if someone's getting frustrated and dying, like, hey bud, what are you doing? What do you see? And just trying to ask them what's going on. If they get mad, well, they get mad. But other times they're gonna be like, well, I'm doing this. Oh, you should try this instead. And in comp games, especially if you're playing solo queuing or duo queuing, people don't like being told what to do. But at least you're making an effort to hey bud, why are you getting frustrated? What's the problem? What can we? And taking a second to do that can be beneficial.
And I think actually Kartos hit a good point here too. Don't solo queue if you're in that low gold, high silverish area. It is so difficult. The game gets significantly easier if you pick a synergistic duo. I'm not saying you should run triples, quads, quints, or six stacks. That is where you will absolutely get ruined because your SR bonus is going to be way too high. But if you run a duo stack of either a main tank with a healer, main tank with an off tank, a DPS with a healer, run something that synergizes well so that you know that your communication and your ability to play is on point with each other, your stack is going to be so much stronger than even a higher mechanical skilled player, because a Mercy with anybody is automatically better than them by themselves. There's not really any kind of solo queue unless your Widowmaker is a true smurf. Then you're going to probably be able to run over a lot of people with just that duo.
And one thing that's kind of been pointed out here throughout all the guests that we have here, it's incredible advice to take forward is that not the best thing isn't always the most optimal thing. So, your most optimal comp, the thing that has the best synergy and is what the pros run. You don't need to run that in your gold games. You're not playing against pros. So, what you can do is just play around a certain playstyle. You have a Torb 1 trick? Okay, well maybe you should play Bunker. Like something like that. Like play a hero that can play off of the fact that you have a Torb instead of, something that has no synergy there. Just playing with that player and doing something that is going to enable that person who's not going to switch is going to be a lot more valuable to you and to your team than just trying to play the thing that's the most optimal, but having a Torbjorn instead of a Brig. It's really valuable to just play around those people. You have a DPS Moira, well play something that doesn't get punished by having a DPS Moira. Play the Wrecking Ball, something that's super self-sufficient. The Winston, who's super mobile and can save himself if he needs to. So on and so forth. You have a lot of options. Just because it's not the most optimal does not mean that it's something you shouldn't run. So in the case of the Moira-Ana combo that you actually pointed out individually in this question, in gold, Moira-Ana honestly isn't the worst thing in the world. Having a defensible is super strong, but you don't always need that. Sometimes you can just win because you have more healing. And in gold, where you're not really getting your ultimates super coordinated, you don't really need your defensive ults as much. So just know where you're at and adapt accordingly. So you don't always need the defensive ult in gold, whereas you might in, something like platinum, where you start to see more ultimates comboed together.
I think Kartas will totally attest. Like, if you're a Reinhardt player and you're at 400 to 500 health, you're swinging. You're not holding the right click. So, if you're playing Moira-Ana into a Reinhardt and you're just pocketing the crap out of that guy, even if he's terrible, even if he's hitting S all the time, he's not going to die, which means he's got presence on the point. And thanks Goat's composition, we figured out that playing the objective is the way to win in a lot of cases. And at gold, you're not going to have a nano Genji come in and get a 4K. Generally. I shouldn't. I'm going to hit that with a big underline. Sorry about that, boys. But, it just doesn't happen at, that kind of SR. If you have a Reinhardt player that can't die because he's got so much healing and their team doesn't have the focus fire, Shaka Khan nailed it on the head. You play to the strength of the team, or a combination that can't be beat without coordination.
All right. Does anybody else have any other thoughts for this?
I think the big theme throughout this, and probably based on looking on the other questions, is things like flexibility in your game play. Not necessarily in your hero pool, but flexibility in your ability to change how you're actually playing the game and how you're approaching each round and each map is actually going to be the biggest difference maker in whether or not you're able to improve. I know that's something I struggle with a lot, and the way that I overcome that is by having a really wide hero pool, but that's not for everyone. If you have a really narrow hero pool, maybe you need to be able to just simply adjust your playstyle using those couple 3 heroes. And once you can do that, you're able to play around some non-ideal situations and make the best out of a crappy situation.
I'm the hardest one trick probably in the league. I think I have the most hours in a single hero over anyone else in the league. I've been playing Hanzo since season 7, I think, was when he was my first main, and he hasn't been not my first main in all my competitive seasons. You do. You play the hero that will help you the most, but you have to adjust the style. You've got to adapt. And that's the hardest part about Overwatch is you can't play the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Thanks, Einstein.
Yeah, insanity, right?
So I think the biggest and the best answer to your question here is how do you play around players who don't know the basics of Overwatch? Well, play to enable them, whether that's playing a different hero or changing your play style. Just be flexible. And again, I'm gonna clarify this just one last time. Flexibility does not mean having a very big hero pool. It just means being able to change your playstyle on the go. So let's go ahead and move on to the second question of the episode. Is it better to play to the team's needs or your best hero in the role you chose? Foxum, we'll go ahead and start with you this time.
Of course. Thanks, Shaka Khan, for this one.
Of course.
So, I play obviously a ton of Hanzo. That's like the hero that I'm known for playing in basically every situation at all times, whether it's dive, bunker, 2-2-2, whatever we happen to be running. Just play Hanzo with it, right? He's a generalist, which is true. Thankfully, the hero of my choice fits in a lot of situations. For me, it worked out because of the hero that I liked. I could play Hanzo in a lot of places, and I can play for picks, I can play for damage and shield break, I can play for your mid-range DPS versus a long-range DPS or their short-range DPS. Hanzo managed to work out for me because of that. Would I recommend all heroes to do that? Not at all. If you are a Widowmaker specialist, you need to understand that Widowmaker does not apply on all maps and needs to be in different places. If you are even a Reinhardt specialist, someone that I also play a ton of, you've got to understand that Reinhardt does not work in all levels. Now, that might be more aimed towards our Platinum, low Diamond friends. In Gold and Silver, if you are truly actually caring with your role, whether your team is supporting you or not, there is a small difference. I mean, Jabo will attest with me here. Jabo and I climbed from a basically mid-goldish level up into the mid-plats, running exclusively Reinhardt Moira. Basically on every map, no matter what happened. I wouldn't recommend that. I think it's a little crazy, but it does work because the synergy was there. Now, can you do that with DPS heroes? You'd have to be a insane player. If you're an insane Genji player, yeah, you can do it. But there are some DPS heroes that you just can't do it with, and you've got to understand where your hero is good and where it is not. If you do not have a hero that can achieve verticality, like Tracer, or something like that, then you need to understand that Gibraltar or any of those other maps that you have to jump on, it's very difficult to play. You've got to understand where your hero is good and where they are not. If you're playing defense on some of those 2CP maps, Symmetra is fantastic. Symmetra has some great things on Volskaya. She's got some good stuff on Anubis. She can do a lot of great things. But you've got to understand when Symmetra is not necessarily your best pick. And again, this probably goes back to our first question with like flexibility. Flexibility is good, but it's more about playstyle and understanding. I only specialize in a small number of heroes. I basically play Hanzo, Genji, McCree, and then Ana and Reinhardt, right? So we're talking 2 people that are outside of the DPS range, and then 3 people that I can play. I guess I can play Ashe too. 4 people I can play in DPS. But I know where to play each of those persons on each of those maps, and I don't feel afraid on any of those maps. I never pick any of those heroes and worry that I'm not going to be effective. And I think that's where the big thing happens. You can't be worried that you're not going to be effective at what you're doing. If you're playing DPS, you need to do damage and you need to get picks. If you're playing tank, you need to get space and create some kind of shielding for your team. Unless you're the off tank, you need to create some kind of difference for your team to not stay alive. If you're playing support, you need to enable those people that are making plays and keep those people that are making mistakes from making more mistakes for longer.
Yeah, I think I generally agree with that. I have a little bit of a different take, though, overall, specifically in regards to the question. The specific question is to play to the team's need or play your best hero in that role. So, using Foxum's hero pool as an example, all of those DPS heroes are viable in pretty much 9 out of 10 situations minimum. And if you can't make it work, then something else is probably going wrong. So, in the DPS hero pool, he's fine. In the support and the tank line, he's got the Ana and he's got the Reinhardt, respectively. There are situations in which it is better off for him not to flex to the specific needs of the team and instead specifically play something that he's good at. And what I'm going to say may make some people angry, but it's the truth, and it's something we've already touched on actually in question 1, is that playing meta is not right. At least in a comp environment, playing meta is not the right way to play.
Amen.
Playing meta in a team environment, yeah, we can make that argument all day, and I will make that argument all day. And if you're 6 stacking, and if you've got the tools at your disposal in terms of other players to work with, yeah, play meta. But if you are solo queuing or duo queuing or something like that, you don't play meta. However, you do need to place a high priority on your team's needs. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to recognize what type of a play style or possibly a hero change is needed. So, i.e., as an example, let's say a Doomfist is absolutely destroying my team, single-handedly destroying my team, using Foxham's hero pool of the Genji, Ashe, Hanzo, and what was the last DPS you said?
Kree, Lamau.
Kree, okay. So, most people would probably say to play the Kree. That is an option. Stun the Doomfist, headshot him, fan the hammer, whatever. Do work. If you're hitting your shots, great, that works. Sometimes maybe you need to be playing the Hanzo, and this is a little bit of a different thing, but maybe the Doomfist isn't actually what's giving your team the problem. It just looks like it is because he's the one lighting up the kill feed and the one getting the final blows. Maybe it's actually that monkey that's going in. Maybe it's actually the monkey that's going in and isolating 2 or 3 people, or 1 or 2 people every single time he goes in. They can't get peeling, and the Doomfist is able to capitalize on the space that's being made.
Maybe there's an Ana that's shooting from a million miles away.
Or that, yeah. So in that situation, all of these DPS heroes work. I wouldn't probably recommend the Ashe, but the different, we'll negate that conversation for now. But you can play the Hanzo, you can play the Kree, and you can play the Genji just fine in that situation. However, you need to be able to recognize what the actual problem is within your team. Now, in terms of selecting your hero at the beginning of a match, this is the hardest thing to do in Overwatch, I think, but you have to trust your teammates. When your teammates jump into a game and you've got an Instalock Genji, Widow, Tracer, trust them that they're going to be able to do what they can. They probably won't, let's be real, but you got to trust them, because if you start off on the wrong foot immediately, you're going to be having a hard time. Let's say I'm a DPS player and I see 3 people go DPS and I can't play support. I'm a bad support player. Should I play support? Hell no! I should be playing my DPS, because that's what I'm good at. Therefore, maybe the team's need in that situation is just even more aggression by adding a 4th DPS rather than bringing in a crappy support player in myself. So, yes, play to the team's needs. No, don't play meta. I'm off my soapbox about meta.
No, I mean, absolutely. I've won games, I remember, and I told my wife, City Owl, who sometimes has subbed in our league, I mean, I won a game one time, a 5v6 playing Brigitte as our main tank with 3 DPS and 1 healer. It was the stupidest crap I've ever seen. But it can be done. You can do it. You just have to understand that your team, if they're fragging, all you have to do is stay alive. And I will also recommend, since it is pertinent to this question, learn someone in each role. Learn one person in each role that you feel at least comfortable playing. Whether it's tank, DPS, or support. You don't even need to go into the sub-roles of off-tank, projectile DPS, off-support, whatever it happens to be. Learn someone in each role so that you can flex and feel comfortable in that flex. If you need to flex to Reinhardt, even though you're playing Gibraltar, well, at least you have a tank that can ride the payload, and he's got a big old shield. Alright? I mean, you can do something with that if they're going to play, as Jabo said, Genji, Tracer, Doomfist. All right, sweet. Well, at least someone's on the payload, you know? Something has to happen there. You've got to be able to flex enough that you can play those different things, but you can't feel uncomfortable, right? J-Bo nailed it on the head. If you feel uncomfortable playing something and you're playing in a competitive environment, you are in the wrong.
You're the problem with question number 1.
Right, you're not the solution by playing Mercy. Yeah. You're the fucking problem.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I agree and I disagree with, just because of I play main tank. I kind of trick my way onto Reinhardt and Winston, and I kind of based on the fact of what the other team is playing, not necessarily what my team is playing. Like if they're playing Reaper, odds are I'm not gonna play Winston. Like that's like you're the big dumb.
It beats you up.
Yeah, it's like it's just not efficient. It's not. You're just gonna beat your head against the wall. So it's, if I'm like, okay, cool, we need a main tank, and it's like, I generally pick Winston because that's my go-to. I swear every time I play a game and I pop off, it's like, man, why do I even play Reinhardt? Like when I'm playing Winston, it's like I say that probably every game that I play Winston. It's like, why do I even play Reinhardt? But I know that, oh yeah, if they're running a Reaper or something like that, then it's like, okay, I should probably switch to Reinhardt. Slightly better, not great, but it's it's slightly better. But then also it's like, if they're running Doomfist, I probably shouldn't play Reinhardt because I'm just a big target the whole time. So it's like, okay, I should probably switch over to Winston. So for me, I react to what the other team is playing. That's and that's what it's like. I play the best hero in the role that I choose, but for the other team, what the other team is running. If they don't have a counter to anything that I'm doing, then I just kind of stay with Winston or whatever, or Reinhardt or whatever I'm doing, if it's working. So it's like I usually pick the best hero in the role that I choose, as opposed to the team's needs, which is team's needs is important, especially if you're like duo queuing, like or it depends on like Gibraltar. Me as a main tank player, I'm probably not going to run Reinhardt on Gibraltar. Because I'm pretty sure every time we play it, I pick Reinhardt, Fox is like, Reinhardt on Gibraltar? So it's like...
Sorry.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. So that's my... I usually pick the best hero in the role with, there's some asterisks and caveats to all the things, but that's me personally.
I'm actually going to jump in real quick on this, specifically talking about counters, because I think this brings up a really good point of, do you play into your counters or not? And for me, if I see a Reaper and I'm playing Reinhardt, I'm probably actually going to switch to Winston, because I personally can dance my way around a Reaper easily with Winston. I have no problem with Reapers 9 times out of 10 on Winston. If I'm playing Reinhardt and if there's a Reaper on the other team, I'm going to hate my life because I don't know how to play against a Reaper as a Reinhardt, with the exception of getting charges and shatters. So, don't think of it as conventional counters, like conventional school of thought counters. Think of it as your personal counters. So for me, I personally, quote, Reaper, quote, counters Reinhardt for me, but he does not at all counter me when I'm playing Winston. So, I think that's actually a really interesting point. Maybe that's something for a future podcast, but counters should not be thought of as your traditional rock, paper, scissors counters, because it's different for every person. It's knowing your matchups, knowing your personal matchups.
I mean, I can't play Winston for crap, but I can play Reinhardt. I can beat that Reaper.
So with all that, yeah, I'd say that the kind of concise answer to all this would be that you guys go all over the place.
What?
And you even started to touch on the next question, which congratulations, you played yourself. So the kind of concise answer to this, I would say, would now correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. It would be that when you're in the spawn room before the game and you see that you have 3 DPS players that insta-locked it, and you're just sat here like, oh, but I'm a DPS main, and like, oh my god, and I've got to play healer, or I've got to play main tank, and you're literally a garbage healer or main tank, just play what you're good at. Especially at the lower elos, honestly. Like,
absolutely.
Like, if you want to climb, how do you think you're going to climb when you are, say you're a mid-gold level Hanzo main, and you load in, 3 DPS heroes are picked, and you decide you're going to play support, and your next best support player is like a silver level Zenyatta. How do you expect to win your mid-gold game playing a a mid-silver hero?
You're gonna get silver results. That's the issue.
Exactly. So sometimes it's about just playing what you're good at, and not necessarily being a meta slave. Meta slave, bad. Very bad. Unless you're in like GM top 500, it doesn't matter. You can just play what you're good at here and be okay. So I would say in the kind of or situation you've presented, better to play to the team's needs or your best hero. In the lower ranks, definitely your best hero. Do what you can, do everything you can do, and accept that sometimes a game's going to be unwinnable, and just get better, get reps. We always say, oh, I wish there was a comp mode that we could practice in that didn't count for SR. Well, when you know you've already lost the game, instead of banging your head against the wall, playing a hero at a silver level instead of a gold level, just play your gold level hero and get practice in that elo. So that's my consensus on everything you guys have said. Is that correct? If I missed any big points you guys would like to mention before we wrap up and go to the third question?
Sounds about right.
I mean, I don't like people putting words in my mouth, but it seems like you did it pretty well.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Got him.
So our third and final question is super simple. Let's see what you've got. What's an optimum number of heroes to be really good at?
I'm going to go last because knowing the other two guests on this, I've got a little bit of a different answer here.
Let's hear from Cardis first.
Okay, so I play the main tanks, and so it's like, Reinhardt, Winston, obviously, those are the two. And then Orisa, I try to be good at, so I would consider that in there. And then I throw in a couple of off tanks just to be like the Zarya Diva, and so I would say for me personally, it's around 5. Maybe 6 if I feel a Roadhog that day, but I would say 5, just so that if someone is like, hey, let me play main tank, I'm really feeling it, then I can switch over to the off tank. And then if those 2 roles are taken, it's wheels off at that point, so I have no idea what's going on. So it's, I think, 5 to 6 for me personally. Maybe at the gold or silver elo, like you've said earlier, 1 or 2 in each role. Just to have a good spectrum of heroes, especially if you're learning the game, learning how all the heroes work is, I think that's really, really important, because you're like, why won't that Reaper die? It's like, okay, well, he has lifesteal. Did you know that? It's like, things like that. So I think in the lower elos, just 1 or 2 heroes per pool. And when I say per pool, it's like, for me, it'd be like projectile, hit scan, things like that. That way you can at least know how each role works and each hero works. So.
Yeah, mine's a little different. So mine's all about understanding, right? You need to understand every hero. If you don't understand the heroes, then you're doing something different. Understanding is not playing, though. When it comes to heroes that you need to be able to play, you need to be able to play 1 hero in each role that is a major role. So tanks, DPS, or support. You need to be able to play 1 hero in each of those at an extremely high level. Whether it's off healer, off tank, main tank, whatever it happens to be, you need to understand how to play 1 hero in each of those different roles. Now, whatever role that you like to specialize in, you should learn multiple heroes in that ability, right? If you're like a tank specialist, then you should learn multiple tanks, but you still need to be able to play at least 1 Ashe, or you need to be able to play Zenyatta, whatever it happens to be. So you need 1 hero in each of the different roles, so that if as Kartas says, shit hits the fan or the wheels fall off, you need to be able to jump into something and be okay with it.
All right, well that was quick. I'll jump in with mine. I'll answer a slightly different question. Hopefully it gives the answer to the actual question. But what I would say is you need to understand how you learn. For me, I understand the way I learn is that my mechanics improve incredibly slowly, like abnormally slowly. I have, God, how many hours do I have? I have probably 800 scrim hours in this game at this point, and my mechanics don't show that. They do not reflect that in the slightest. However, I think I have an extremely strong grasp of the game itself. So I think that I can pick up a lot of different heroes pretty quickly, as long as I have decent enough mechanics to where I can make the heroes work. But for instance, my Hanzo's not good because I can aim good. My Hanzo's good because I think I generally, except when I feed my freaking brains out, I generally know where I need to position and who I need to be targeting. So I can take that Hanzo knowledge and I can apply that to the entire roster. And so, just as Foxum was saying, you need to understand how every hero works, but you don't necessarily need to be able to play them. I've personally taken that a little bit differently, in that my way of understanding how the heroes work is to put enough time in them to feel like I can actually play them. That gives me more experience of matchups, 1v1s, counters, all of that other stuff. And it's something that I can apply into my personal gameplay and, transfer it to basically any hero. That is not feasible for everyone at all. So, it is important to understand how you learn. If you're, a nutty mechanical aimer, like there's one guy in the league that I'm specifically thinking of right now, which is Reckless, who has bananas aim. Absolute bananas aim. So I would highly recommend for him, for instance, just grab the aim-intensive heroes. Don't worry about the ones that require big brain unless you want to learn the big brain. But, again, that's not going to be for everyone. Some people have, good game sense and maybe even subpar mechanics. But if you have good game sense and kind of aim, for instance, maybe just stick with the main tanks. Maybe just stick with certain off tanks. Maybe stick with things like Lucio. Like, you can be an extremely effective Lucio without going red at Lucio. You don't want to sit on the ground, necessarily, but you can be an extremely effective Lucio without just fragging out. I know you're going to kill me, Shaka, for saying that, but deal with it.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong.
So I would say learn as many as you can. But as soon as you feel a hero that you enjoy playing and you feel effective with and you feel like they're somebody that you can apply into situations, as soon as you feel that hero's skill level dropping, you have gone too far. And you need to rein it in, and you need to tighten up the heroes that you're good at. But I think Foxum has the most important comment in this entire thing, which is you need to understand all of them. You need to understand the mechanics of every single hero. You don't have to be good at them, though.
As someone who plays a limited hero pool, you've got to understand that some things are good at what you're doing. I only play basically 4 to 5 DPS at a sufficient level to win, and I need to know which hero to play in the right situation. But if I don't know what their Reaper can do, if I don't understand that the Symmetra can teleport people or that they gain energy when they're breaking shields and ammo, those different things massively apply. You've got to understand which hero is the right area. Now, if you're playing quick play and you're just trying to practice, then practice your heart out. Get good at the hero mechanically, but understanding where the hero is good, completely different thing.
Absolutely. So I think you all have agreed in the fact that at very least you need to understand how the heroes interact together. And I think that's the biggest thing to take away from this for all you guys listening. Understand what the heroes do, where they're good, why they're good. Now, if you want an answer to, what's the most optimum number of heroes to get good at, the general recommendation that I hear tossed around, and that I would recommend personally, would be about 3 to 5. Have a DPS player you can play, or have a DPS hero you can play. Have a support or 2. Have a tank or 2. Maybe 2 DPS. Whatever it is, just have something where you can go anywhere you need to if you absolutely need to. but it kind of comes back to our previous question in playing what you're good at is oftentimes better. So when you're preparing the things that you're going to be good at, think about that. Think about the situations in which you might want to heal instead of just playing a 4th DPS. Sometimes that is a thing you should consider, but only if you actually get to that point in being able to play a hero at that level. So, hard answer between 3 and 5. The very open-ended answer, whatever you feel you're best at. Do you think you can get good at 10 heroes? Do you think you can get good at the whole roster? Or do you think you can only manage 2 or 3? All of these questions are things you should ask yourself and consider before just jumping in and trying to learn every single hero super well. Do understand what they do, but you know what's best for yourself. Well, I'll leave it at that. Does anybody else have anything they want to add before we go ahead and wrap up here?
Thanks, Shaka, for hosting us. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what this podcast gets to.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining me here. I am very, very excited to be going through with this. So I'd like to thank all 3 of our guests one more time for coming in. It's been great having you all. I'd also like to thank all of you for sticking around to the end of this podcast. It's the first one. It was a little rocky, but we got there in the end, so I appreciate that. Make sure to join us next week for our 2nd episode of the I Need Healing podcast. I've been Shaka Khan, and
I need healing!
I need healing.
I need healing!
I need healing. I need healing.
I need healing.